ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday weekly session. I can't call it morning session today because it's evening there, morning here. And now we shall continue on the core message of Bhagavad Gita in the concluding 4 chapters. Actually, chapter 15 is one of the, I would say, very important chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and it gives clarity to all the major issues which we raise. Who am I? Who is controlling this universe? Why I am born as poor or rich? Or whatever fundamental issues which we raise in our life, they in some way have been answered in this chapter. So we will take a few verses from here. Verse number 7 actually clarifies very clearly that the individual soul, or Jivatma as we call it, is definitely a part of the Supreme. It's very clearly mentioned here. Mamay vanso jeev loke, jeev bhute sanatana, mane sasta nindriyani prakrti sthani karsati. That इस देह में सनातन जीवात्मा मेरा ही अंश है. This is very clear here that Jivatma is a part of the Supreme. And the other point very clear here is that this Jivatma actually operates through this body mind instrument. With the help of 5 senses and mind, it keeps operating our system. So these two things are very clear here. The Jivatma is part of what you call universal consciousness or Paramatma. And this Jivatma, through the consciousness, operates this body-mind complex constantly. So this is very clear here. Then there's another thing which we raise. Why am I born poor or rich or in India or in some other country? Now this issue has been very well clarified in the next verse, verse number 8. It clearly says that as the wind takes the smell from one place to another, similarly, the Jivatma at the time of death takes away the essence of the mind and sense organs and takes them to the next birth or next body. So the essence of this birth, whatever we did in this birth, that is taken away through our sense organs and mind by Jivatma to the next birth. And that becomes the cause of our next birth, or whatever we call our sanskar and our conditions of living. Somebody is born in a rich house, somebody born in a poor house, somebody born in a very house full of wisdom, somebody is born in a house full of agyan or full of lack of wisdom. So all that happens because of this. This has also been very clearly answered here. Then another issue which is very fascinating, that this Jivatma also does the bhog. It is also what you call is involved in the world, though it may be very, absolutely akarta, absolutely non-performing, but through the sense organs and the mind, it is involved in the world. This is verse number 9. Srotam shaksu sparsam cha rasnam घ्राण मेव च अधिष्ठाय मनश्च चाय vishya mupsevate, that it is actually accepting the Visay through the utilization of sense organs and mind. So, this Jivatma is in that sense a bhokta. It is not completely free from bhog, but it is not doing anything. It is just, uh, you know, taking the consequences of the body mind complex. So, this is another issue which is very clear here. And then let's take verse number 15. Now, in the 15, once again, Lord Krishna clarifies that मैं ही सब प्राणियों के हृदय में अंतर्यामी रूप से स्थित हूं. That the Paramatma is Jivatma. Paramatma is located in everybody's heart. और मुझी से स्मृति ज्ञान और अपोहन होता है और सब वेदों में मैं ही जानने योग्य हूं और वेदांत का कर्ता और वेदों का जानने वाला भी मैं ही हूं. So the final source of knowledge, the final source of life is the Supreme. This has been emphatically clarified here. This has also been clarified partially in chapter 9, but here it is absolutely clear. So this is one message which we get from this chapter, that this world is not running on its own, it's not independent. The cause of all causes is the Supreme. The birth we get is also because of our karma, and the life we get is because of the Supreme, and whatever knowledge we acquire is all because of the Supreme. The Supreme is Vedo ka bhi Ved, that is all the knowledge is coming from there. So these things are very clear: the source of life, the source of knowledge, and the cause of rebirth. And there are many other things here which are there, but we have already dealt with those verses in detail. So I will not go into those verses again. But these things are absolutely clear in this chapter. Now we will take a few verses of chapter 16. In the first two verses, Lord Krishna, rather three verses, Lord Krishna is actually providing the essence of what we call Devik Pravarti. This is absolutely the good qualities of human being that have been summarized in the first three verses. There are many of them, and we have seen them very clearly. But he provides greater emphasis on Asuri Pravarti in the subsequent part of this chapter. And he gives six important, attributes of Asuri Pravarti. That is in verse number 4, that is Damp, that is people who are, telling lies to boast themselves. Ghamand, Ghamand is telling the reality, in an inflated way, that you are very, arrogant. And then Abhiman is actually you have some power, but then you are very proud of it. You are, you know, trying to impress others that I am doing this. Like somebody is, for example, a minister in the cabinet, and he becomes very proud of being minister. It is not a false proud like them, but it is a proud based on reality, but it is a proud. And Ghamand is an inflated proud. So there's a difference between these three words: Damb, Ghamand, and Abhiman. तथा क्रोध कठोरता और अज्ञान. These are the next three words. That being angry, being very harsh, and agyan is without, proper wisdom, proper knowledge. So these are principal characteristics of a person who has asuri sampada, who has asuri tendencies. Now, in this, he has gone into many, you know, uh, things, but one thing which I would like to mention here is that those people who have asuri pravartis, they are bound to take rebirth in very difficult conditions. Adhogati, that is what he has used the word. They are going to get into adhogati. Now, that word has been interpreted differently by different people. Some say that he is born in very degradable human conditions. Some say that it can also be the birth in lower species of life, like animals or birds or, marine life and things like that. So, whatever it may be, the fact is that the people who are suffering from these attributes, they are bound to suffer in their next life. So, this is very, very clear. Now, one point which I would like to emphasize is in verse number 8 here. Now, a lot of people, in fact, you talk to millions of people, I would say large majority of people, they believe that we are born in this world because of the, male and female combination. The sexual act between male and female is responsible for our birth. Now, Lord Krishna has very categorically mentioned here that those people who think like this, they have asuri tendencies. This is not true. Just to think that I am born in this world because of the male female combination is absolutely not true. This is not correct knowledge, and that is actually leading them to a very degradable life. So, this is what he said in verse number 8. Asatya mar pratishtham te jagadahu ranishwaram परस्पर संभूत किम्यते काम hetukam. That we are not a product of काम. We are not a, product of man and woman. We have been given birth here because of the Supreme. That has been clarified in the previous chapter. So this kind of knowledge, that there's no God here, there's no regulator here, there's no supreme, and the world is running because of the male female combination, it's absolutely wrong, and we should discard this knowledge straight away if anybody has this kind of thinking. So this is absolutely fantastic verse. And then he says that this kind of people are actually the cause of degradation of humanity. And that is what we see today in the world. The degradation is happening because more and more people are leaving faith in the universe. So this is one of the, great message which has been given with total clarity in this chapter. So now let us go forward. Now, there's another tendency which these people have. These people have tendency of having more and more expectations that, okay, today I'm having 100 rupees, tomorrow I'll have 1,000, then I'll have 1 lakh, then I will have 1 crore, and then I'll do this, I'll do that. So these people, or today I have, a small family, tomorrow I'll have bigger family, I'll have big, supporters all around me. These kind of uh, expectations and these kind of projections, these are done by the people with Asuri Sampada, with very, I would say, uh, low kind of thinking. So this is what Lord Krishna says, and we should not get into that. And very often we find large number of people are doing exactly the same in this world. That I have a small car, I'll have a big car, I have a small house, I'll have a big house. You know, I have this much bank balance, I'll have tomorrow that much. So all that is what he has actually, the word which he has used is आशा की सैकड़ों फांसियों से बंधे हुए. So these are आशा पाश, फांसियां. So this is, we should get rid of that. We should not get involved into that process. This is another great message which has come from this chapter. Then, one very important message here is that if we have a dilemma, what to do and what not to do, then we should follow the message of Shastraj. The शास्त्र विधि से काम करना है कर्तव्य और अकर्तव्य की स्थिति में, if we have to take a decision, then we should not, ignore Shastras. Shastras is the guiding path. It's like, for example, somebody is a pilot. Now he knows how to pilot an aircraft. So he can give you correct directions. When you are sitting next to him, he will guide you correctly how to control an aircraft. If somebody else starts guiding you, or if you start operating on your own, then you could be in trouble. So this is where he says that Shastras is a message which has come from those people who have actually remained united with the Supreme. The knowledge ultimately comes from the Supreme, and therefore the Shastras have flowed from the Supreme through these saints, and therefore we should follow the Shastras whenever we are in a situation of dilemma. So this is what we need to follow. शास्त्र ही प्रमाण है. This is the verse number 24 and 23 both. Both are saying कि शास्त्र विधि से हमें अलग नहीं होना चाहिए. We should not deviate from what has been inscribed or prescribed in the Shastras. And that is why, if you remember, our ancient, Pandits and wise people always emphasized on Shastras. Unfortunately, today, this, custom is becoming very weak. And therefore, people are taking the route as they feel right. Now, as they feel right does not lead them to the right path, because the right path has been realized and actually experienced by very few people. And those few people have put their words in some form which is called Shastra, whether it is Ved or whether it is, Upanishad or any other form of writings by these saints. So that is what Lord Krishna has said. And this process continues to actually the next chapter as well, on the 17th chapter. Now, there was a question which was raised in the 17th chapter in the very beginning, which is a very profound question again, and which is very relevant for all of us. Arjun said that जो मनुष्य शास्त्र विधि को त्याग कर श्रद्धा से युक्त हुए देवादिकों का पूजन करते हैं, वो कौन सी स्थिति में है? That those people are not fully aware about the Shastras, but they have a lot of faith, they have trust, they do things in good faith. Then what happens to them? Then Lord Krishna in this chapter provides in detail that these kind of tendencies they fall into three categories: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Whether it is yajna, whether it is dan, whether it is tap, all these, we normally feel yajna should always be great, but not necessarily. If you don't do it according to the Shastras and if you do according to your own good judgment, then it could fall into three different categories. That is Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. And similarly, we believe that Dan should be very good, but not always. Shraddha should always be very good, but not always. Because if we are not following the tested path, the path which has been prescribed by the great sages and saints, if we ignore that path and do things on our own, then we could be anywhere in these three paths, not necessarily in the right one. So, this is what has been prescribed here, and that actually re emphasizes the importance of Shastras, which has been there in our traditions for very, very long. Of course, this has become very weak of late. Now, actually, Lord Krishna has used a word here, manokalpit, that those people who do things through their own will, thinking this is great, not necessarily doing correct thing, because experiencing this knowledge is not something easy. Very, very few, which he has explained in the beginning of chapter 7, that out of thousands, one or two people try to understand him. And out of those thousands who try to understand him, only one or two actually reach him. So out of millions, one person actually reaches the Supreme and he acquires the true knowledge. Now that knowledge is the only guiding path. There's no other guiding path. It's like you take any, the mundane thing in the world. For example, a laptop, simple laptop. A person who doesn't know how to operate him and he applies his own wisdom to operate, he may be anywhere. He may succeed, he may not succeed, he may even spoil the laptop. But those person who knows it and he follows those instructions which are given in that instruction book, which is like a Shastra in this case, then he will correctly use that equipment. Similarly, in our world, in our real life, if we follow the path given by the sages, which has been in the form of Shastras, then we will reach the right place in the right direction and right way. So, this is what has been explained in this chapter in detail. And then he tells that, he goes into the Varnashram system and he talks about uh, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And he talks about them, uh, what kind of food they like, what kind of tendencies they have. And that has been explained here, that every person has preference of the food according to his own tendencies. Similarly, actions they perform is also according to their own tendencies. So these four varnas, we call them, they are not something in horizon in what you call linear format. They are based. This classification is based on the principal human tendencies, and this is existing all over the world, everywhere. In every society, you will find the people who are interested in learning, in teaching, in scientific knowledge. We can call them Brahman. There are category of people who are interested in body, strength and fight and prowess, and who are very, what you call courageous. Now that category of people which is courageous and they have a strong body and very committed mind and ready to fight for a cause, now those people can be called Kshatriya. And then we have a large number of people who are involved in business activities, whether it is agriculture, whether it is processing, whether it is industry, all that manufacturing, and then sale and purchase, all that forms the large class of Vaishya. And then the fourth is whoever left who is involved in other services. So these categories exist everywhere in the world. This has been wrongly projected by some historians who want to, degrade India's great knowledge, and they have put them into what you call linear form, that Brahman is superior and Vaishya is inferior, and then this and then that. And then it led to what we call, some sort of discrimination against Shudras in our society. Now that is not correct. This is not the correct interpretation of Bhagavad Gita and other Shastras. This is this categorization is based on the natural human tendencies. And then he talks about what kind of food is, liked by sattvic person, liked by rasic person, by tamasic person. Now that is a very good indication of person's tendencies. Very often we tell that the company of a person will tell you his character. Similarly, here the quality of food he eats can also tell his character. So whether he's tamasic, whether he's rasic, or whether he's sattvic can be ascertained from the quality of food he eats. So these are the things which have been explained in great detail in this chapter, in chapter 17. Now, at the end, in verse number 23, Lord Krishna uses three terms, Om Tat Sat. And he says these are the three names which have been used to define the Supreme. The Supreme has been referred by these three names, and Om is the sound which is primordial sound. It is believed that is the first sound which created vibrations to create life in this universe. Tat is referred to him, and he is Sat. He is imperishable. He always exists, always existed, and will always exist. And that is how he has used these three names. And he says that he, the Supreme, can be defined in any one of these three. And all the Ved mantras which we chant, all the prayers which we do, they all start with the word Om. And that is why you will find most of our mantras, most of our scriptures, most of our religious writings, they start with word Om. So this is what Lord Krishna has said. So we must know these three words, and these three words define the Supreme in different context. Now let's go to last chapter, chapter 18. Now chapter 18 again begins with a question from Arjun, and he is asking Lord Krishna the difference between sannyas and tyag. What is tyag and what is sannyas? And Lord Krishna goes and explains to him there are three different versions of tyag and sannyas. Some people say that all the desires which are not necessary, the word which has been used is काम्य कर्म. If you abandon काम्य कर्म, if you त्याग कर दो काम्य कर्मों का, तो आप सन्यासी हैं. This is what is the first. Some people believe that this is the correct version. That if you abandon all the kamya karmas, then you will be sannyasi. That will be the real tyag. Some people believe that all the karmas are with some sort of fault. There is some deficiency in each karma we perform. And therefore, we should abandon all the karmas and retire to a life in forest. Now, that is the second version of some people. The third version is that you do not abandon the karma completely. You do the karmas which are necessary for living, but without any feeling of doership and without any desire for their fruits. So that is the third way. And Lord Krishna believes that you don't need to abandon karma in totality. You should do all the karmas which are required to be done, which are necessary as per your varna. That is, whether you are Brahmin or Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, you should do that karma which is prescribed for your varna. But you should do that karma without any desire for outcome and without any pride of doership. These two conditions, that I am not a doer and therefore you will not be attached to that. Secondly, you have no desire for reaping the harvest of those karmas, and that will actually uh, will not lead to a seed which will bring you back into this universe. So you will become a seedless karma performer. And that is what Lord Krishna is saying here. This is what is important. And then he says, नियत कर्मों का स्वरूप से त्याग करना उचित नहीं है. नियतस्य तु संन्यास कर्मणो नोपपद्यते. That you don't have to abandon the niyat karma. You must perform them. And if you abandon the niyat karma because of some sort of fear or some sort of attachment, then it is called tamas tyag. It is not a good thing to do. So this is what he has explained very clearly in the first few verses of this chapter. Now, since we have gone into detail of all the verses in the past, I will now actually go into the last verse of this chapter, which is verse number 66. Because after that, the verses are more on how to utilize this knowledge. But verse number 66 is the final verse or the final message which Lord Krishna provides in this chapter. Now, you see, after listening to all this philosophy, he listened to chapter 2 that nobody dies, only body dies, the soul is eternal. Then he listened to the theory of karma that, if you do karma without doership, without any desire, then you will not be, required to come back in this world. Then he talked about variety of yokes, how you perform yoga. Then he talked about the relationship between the supreme and the universe or the world in which we live. In chapter 7, he explained in detail that the 8 things that constitute the nature and the life force is separate. That is para and apara. So apara is constituted of 8 factors, that is Akash, then Vayu, then Agni, Jal, Prithvi, Man, Buddhi, and Ahankar. These are the 8 factors constituting apara Shakti of the Supreme, and para Shakti, which is the consciousness that provides Chaitanya to everybody. So then he talks about, his different vibhutis in chapter 10, in what forms he appeared. So all these things which he talked, and then, different version of explanation. Kshetra Kshetragya, that was another chapter in which he explained the difference between Prakriti and Purush, or the Chaitanya and the body mind complex. Then, obviously, he felt that Arjun is still not yet fully convinced. He doesn't have clarity yet, because all these principles sometimes cause confusion. In our mind also, sometimes they cause confusion. And that is why he gave a last, what you call the sutra, last sutra, and which is, I would say, the most important sutra of Bhagavad Gita, that you surrender to the Supreme. You mam ekam sharanam vraj. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraj. That you leave all these principles aside. Don't worry what is happening where. You come in my sharan. You come in my shelter. You surrender to me. Now, this is the principle. Whenever we are in dilemma, sometimes the knowledge is not able to resolve the problems. You go to people, they talk, very wise people. 5 wise people will sit and they will argue for hours and sometimes days together without reaching a conclusion, because all of them have arguments for and against a particular proposition. And these debates will continue forever in human mind. We also have that debate in our mind. And if 5 of us sit together and ask questions each other, we will never be able to resolve that debate. So Lord Krishna says the best answer to this is that you surrender to the Supreme, which he has already said, that Supreme is everywhere. He is pervading the entire universe. He is the source of Chaitanya. He is also the source of Prakriti. Therefore, if we surrender to the Supreme, then everything he does will be accepted by us. That acceptance becomes a norm for us. That whatever comes in life, we take it as it comes. And we keep him all the time in our mind. Now, once we do that, I think our life will become very easy. Our life will become peaceful. Our life will become very happy. Whatever comes in life, we will accept it as prasad of the Supreme. This word prasad is very good, because prasad is given by the Supreme. It is the blessing of the Supreme. And that blessing happens only when we do total surrender. We do a lot of prasadi all over the world here, particularly in India. But that is not really a prasadi. Prasadi is when you surrender to the Supreme, and whatever He gives you, accept it as prasad. That's the real prasadi. And that gives you total peace, total, bliss and happiness eternal. So this is what Lord Krishna ends with chapter number 18. And the last message before he talks about how this message of Gita should be used. But this verse number 66 does not mean that we should not acquire knowledge. We will reach this stage only after we have acquired knowledge. We have to acquire knowledge. We have to understand what is this nature, who am I. We have to understand this world, how this world is managed. We have to understand the basic principles which are enshrined in Bhagavad Gita in different chapters. Once we understand them, then a thought and clarity would come to us that yes, ultimately we should surrender. Without understanding that, if you do the surrender, it will again fall into the three categories, that is sattvic, rasic, and tamasic. It will not be absolutely sattvic. So, if we have acquired the knowledge, that is why Lord Krishna has said in Gita earlier that knowledge is the one which purifies everything in life. It's like the fire which purifies, the various metals. When you melt a metal at a particular temperature, it is purified by fire. Similarly, knowledge is like the fire which purifies every human being, and then we develop a pure interior, antakaran ki suddhi. If we have that inner cleanliness, then only we can reach this verse 66 and do total surrender. Now, that is why we should follow this Gita. This message of Bhagavad Gita, in my opinion, is the most critical for entire humanity. I don't know any single book which contains such profound message which covers all aspects of human life. This is the only book which covers everything which we can imagine. And I would say all the libraries in the world are not equal to this single book. They are nowhere compared to this book. If we can master this book, if we can read it and imbibe the knowledge properly, nothing is better than that. I think we will be reaching a final wonderful stage of our life, which will give us peace, eternal happiness, and complete satisfaction of living this life. So I would end here. We have covered this great scripture, and these words have come from the Supreme Himself, which is the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes. I think we should be thankful to the Supreme, and we should seek His blessings. With these words, I would like to conclude this great scripture today. Thank you very much.